a wave, kind of that, an energetic wave of certain expressions and certain conditionings that comes that are deeper and longer or more ancient than just this individual expression.
Action!
Welcome to the Spirit of Yoga. We are Kirsten
and Devdas
from the Akasha Yoga Academy. In today's Teach Chat, we are exploring the topic of transmutation.
Exciting one, huh?
Transmutation. What is transmutation?
Transmutation, I feel like it's a hot topic for yogis. We were just kind of joking a moment ago that, in fact, transmutation is almost the same as yoga. Transmutation being like rebirth or radical transformation. One of my friends once, we were playing together, and she picked a card, and the card was transmutation, and she was feeling like she got the lesser of the cards because what she wanted was transmutation. Transmutation being a softer, more gentle approach, and transmutation kind of being like you shake yourself out of your old skin, or you awaken into something brand new, and it's almost like you don't have a choice. You just the universe shakes you, and you find yourself in a new life, in a new reality, in a new realm, in a new possibility. And even though that's profoundly the entire attempt of the yogic journey is at that, at some moments that can be a scary process.
Yes. I just looked it up. What's the official definition of transmutation? And it is that like one element changes into a completely different element. So basically it is not an evolution or getting better and better of something, but it's really you change from one thing, or usually I think the word applies to elements and chemicals, like you change one state into a completely different state. So that means the known isn't there anymore, right?
Yeah.
Giving up the known, giving up the familiar, giving up that feels safe, and kind of going into a complete redefinition, independent from what was before. And I found that very, very interesting to, ponder this radical cut and complete new life, basically this death and new life that's inherent in that. So, and yes, the process of yoga or the whole science of yoga is all about that, right? To cut through what is there coming as a past conditioning or as an unfoldment of karma, and to cut through there and to jump into radical transmutation and to radically new.
In some ways, this is what's so fun, It's like, sometimes people say, oh, do you really think there's reincarnation? Do you really think there's more than one life? And of course, the answer in yoga is very clear. Like, it's absolutely 100% that there is. But even if you don't believe in that, inside one lifetime, it's very clear that there are multiple lifetimes, right? It's like you reinvent yourself. Even recently, I was on a call with someone, and I appreciated so much. He said, I'm just about to move to a different place. I'm moving out of one city and I'm moving into another city. And he said, I'm getting myself spiritually prepared because there's an opportunity to be a completely new me.
Yeah.
And I something felt like that's so beautiful and so smart, actually, right? It's like no one's holding me in any idea of what I have been in the past.
Absolutely.
There's this opportunity now to just become something, whatever I want. It's like the slate is empty. So I'm I'm kind of preparing myself in for this brand new birth. And but from a yogic perspective, we would say, I think that possibility is there even if you don't move cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your current life as it is, in your current practice as it is, there's the potential for reincarnation or transmutation inside every moment.
But I find this moving place and stepping out of the outer expectations, images, and just creations of what you are by your surroundings, by your workplace surroundings, by your family surroundings, by your friends, and you remove yourself from that and go somewhere completely different. So, like one layer of holding you in a certain shape
Mm.
falls away. But I feel that's only one layer that falls away
Mm.
because there's another internal layer that holds us
Mm.
in shape that is the self image, self expectations, patterns, history, and being identified with being the result of that history as a personality, as a psychologically defined
Entity.
being, entity. Yeah, so I feel, yes, it is definitely an opportunity because this holding in place is less,
Mm.
but there's definitely also a second one who keeps you in place. And this is the one I feel who is important to work with or to look at, this conditioning that is beyond an outside shape giver, so to speak, which is starting to see your own reactions, your own thought patterns, your own self expectations, your own reactions just to or
Yeah.
responses to circumstances.
Mm.
And I feel where it's really getting interesting is to meet this one and to move away from this one. So on
Mm.
one hand, move away from the outer conditions is a really good opportunity and a wonderful opportunity. And I felt that in my first travels, I remember as I was like 20, traveling the first time, leaving my culture, like into a completely different culture. I was just so amazed by so much questioning that started happening of the way I'm thinking, the way I'm defining myself, the way I'm moving through life. Like that was a wonderful process to just question all of that. That was the things that were never seen and never questioned. So that was very, very exciting process.
Mm.
But I feel like the deeper process of transmutation is like to transmute the
Yeah.
inside.
Definitely. And maybe that's, I feel like that's then almost from a yogic perspective into the realm of meditation, right? It's like when there starts to be distance between you and your thoughts and your identities. And, we get that feedback from people on our course all the time. I'm in this situation. In the past, it would have been a triggering situation for
Mhm.
me. I know I would have been upset. And I just am feeling totally fine. It's
Yeah.
like, something's just happening and I'm okay. Why are you not triggered? There's space in between you and your karmic memory. Like, I feel like when that karmic memory is like very sticky for you, everything is just a reaction and you're not even really in control of those
Yeah.
reactions. It's just like you're being kind of bounced about by life and, you're just reacting the way you react. As you begin to meditate and really practice yoga, there begins to be this space. And then even sometimes you see, wow, this is happening. And I know in the past I would be upset, but somehow I'm not upset because there's this beautiful space in between me and the reactions that are happening. And somehow I'm not so reactive. Or if there's a movement, like you were saying, the movement is rather an internal movement. It's like, okay, this tough situation in my life is happening. Oh, wait a minute. If I have a responsibility, my responsibility is connect into my breath. Okay, if I really am connecting into my breath and into the moment, like the sense of the sharpness of a problem
Mm-hmm.
just isn't as acute, right? You're connected into the source of your life and your life force and your presence, and it's just like nothing seems so serious, and you can just let things happen. Um, but I know also that you were talking about, and recently on a call with people, the role of national family karma and national karma. And I'm curious, is it your experience that it's as easy to extricate yourself from your individual karma as from your family and national karma, or what's that role been like? What's that experience been like in your life?
I feel they are tied together in a way, so it's not so easy and clear for me to define this is individual karma, that's
Mm.
national karma,
Mm.
that's family karma. I feel
Mm.
it's somehow interwoven.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just so interesting to start seeing how some of the patterns, some of the reactions, some of the just responses, they are not naturally or necessarily um, you as an individuality or as a
Mm.
personality, but they are more like responses that come out of your field that you have been growing up, and even deeper than that, like not only like circumstances forming you currently, but I feel like an energetic underlying pattern that we entered this world with.
Mm.
Similar to also astrological influences, right? Kind
Right.
of there is energetic influences which are beyond
Mm.
just like what am I meeting in
Yeah.
person in the physical and emotional realm,
Mm.
as this personality. Like there are underlying currents in which we are
Mm.
reborn,
Yeah.
and in which things play out. And so it was more in the past few years the recognition how certain patterns that I assume they are individual patterns, like especially work mentality, self definition through work, basically, um, and not only definition, almost like a um, how to put it, like almost
Like identification.
identification,
This
but almost like a
like people underestimate this word identification. The dent in identification actually refers to your teeth.
right,
Like it's the same root word as dental, and
yeah,
in that way
right.
identification is, you can kind of almost picture like a dog, like biting on a bone. I'm not going to let go of that. It's a stronger word, I think,
Yeah,
than people
right,
think.
right. Yeah. But what I wanted to, or kind of tap into more, is this part of not only identification, but almost a permission or a license of spending your life in one way or another, or your lifetime
Mm.
in one way or another.
Mm.
Um, and it was more in the recent years that I see that this is not so much individual, but this is something that comes through my nationality and
Mm.
through the energy in this upbringing,
Mm.
and energetic upbringing, and in, of course, very much also family definition, the energy that
Mm.
runs through the family, not only through the family of parent and direct siblings, but I feel from much before that.
Yeah.
Like there's really a wave, kind of that, an
Yeah.
energetic wave of certain expressions and certain conditionings that
Yeah.
comes that are deeper and longer
Yeah.
or more ancient
Yeah.
than just this individual expression.
I mean, that's like, I feel like the potential of that memory to go backward in time is not to be underestimated. One of the great modern yogis used to say he remembered the lifetime when he was a diamond. You know, it's like, and even my
Uh-huh.
own teacher in India used to often say somebody should write an entire history of the universe, but it should be written according to the five elements. Like it should be traced backward to the point at
Mm-hmm.
which the element itself was kind of like telling a story of the unfolding of consciousness. And it's like, wow, I feel like that storehouse of kind of, which is in a way all memory, right? All karma is memory.
Yeah.
Like that memory that we have is actually much, much, much more profound and much deeper than what we think. And the problem is not necessarily with the memory itself, because someone like my teacher in India can remember
Yeah.
like things that for us would be unfathomable to remember back when they were an element or
Diamonds.
a diamond or you know whatever else that, or some other lifetimes that they had or whatever else that they're remembering. So the problem with, I think it's nice to recognize that the problem with karma isn't memory itself. Like
Mm-hmm.
memory itself is just memory.
Yeah.
Like these great souls, they have much more memory than what we would have. The problem is the holding,
Mm-hmm.
right? The pattern of holding, like holding on to that memory as this is me. Uh, you know, this is my unique story somehow. And there's a story about my teacher in India that I feel like is illustrates this aspect of karma, and maybe it's a little bit hard to accept, but it's a true story. So my teacher in India was staying in a temple in Vrindavan, actually in Barsana. Barsana is the neighborhood that Radha grew up in. It's very near Krishna's birthplace also. And there was a temple that he used to stay in. And he was traveling at that point with who I speculate was his soulmate. It was another sadhu, two sadhus that just traveled together. But they had a very close connection, and many times in their life, things kind of unfolded at the same time. They had a very profound, deep spiritual connection. And they were living together in this very remote temple, and there was a bathing place that was, but you had to go through the temple to get back to the bathing place. So there was only one road in and one road out. And so generally you would know if somebody else was there.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he was walking down to take a bath, and he saw a complete stranger walking the other direction, someone he'd never seen before. But it occurred to him, I would have seen that this person come. Like I would have seen, you know, that they'd come through the temple and that nobody came. So strange. And he just kind of said, greeted this man, and the man didn't say anything and just walked by. And he was thinking it as he was taking his bath. Oh, that's odd. I would have seen that man come. And then later he was talking to his friend, the one that he was staying with, and he said, you know, I saw this man walking up the street at around this time as I was going down to take my bath. And the man said, that was me. And he said, he kind of knew in his heart it had to be true because no one could have come. And then they both accepted the idea, if you're completely free of memory of being a particular way, even your appearance can completely change. Like even the way that you look. And that can seem at first like, oh, wow, that's a super far out thing to say. Except I think it aligns with our experience as human beings. Like, have you ever seen somebody as you were walking through the world that just radiated a kind of joy? It's like we've all seen that. You know, we've seen someone that, and maybe they're not even smiling, but their being is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like resonating with this joy. What is that? It's a memory, right? It's like it's a condensed memory. And that affects the visual representation of that human being. Like our memory
Yeah.
holds our shape. Like,
Yeah.
our karma holds our identity. And when I feel like many of us have had experiences of some degree of freedom from that memory. Like we were talking about in meditation, we see, oh, wow, I'm not that, and that's confirmed and seen and clear. But I think at some point it's possible that you are so radically free from that that you could just transmute in an instant. You could be one thing, and then rather than, okay, I'm working myself up to create a new identity when I move to the city, it would just be like, poof, I'm something completely different, because there's so much variability in the being and so much lack of identification with the memory, that the memory is then free. And I feel like, to some extent, maybe we see that a little bit in the life of children, right? It's like one thing that I've appreciated so
Mm-hmm.
much watching Serena grow up is like her I am, which is kind of the base level of existence. It is totally free in its association. It's like, I am Peppa Pig. I am, the sky. It just is free to associate with anything. And maybe it's not, actually fully expressing that, but it's much more mutable. It hasn't condensed itself in any way
Mm-hmm.
into a actual identity that has, you could say, karmic repercussion. Like in an adult, when the identity is very strong, then there's going to be patterns that are playing out, repeating themselves, and that can be that can have consequence.
Mm-hmm.
But in children, where it's still very fluid, it feels like you also see less consequence, right? It's still forming itself. It's still playing. There's still this mutability, and that mutability is not to be underestimated, because it can even change the way that you appear in some way.
I just feel to share, like, to touch back to this, national karma and karma being seen, and freeing oneself, or the process of being freed from uh, from karma, basically. Um, I felt something rather recently really shifted strongly in this identification when it comes to this national karma, and it kind of created so much freedom in
Mm.
a way, and presence, and not freedom in a way that it is, something euphoric, but more something very grounded and spacious and natural about it. Um, and I felt I'm landing in something new. I
Mm.
feel basically a transmutation
Mm.
taking place. But then rather recently, I felt almost under karmic mind attack. Um, I felt the old was trying to so much
Yeah.
grip and
Yeah.
hold and shake and
Mm.
be so loud. Like,
Mm.
I didn't experience such a loud identification with that
Mm.
in a long time. And I just want to share that, that the process is, like, not necessarily completely linear, and it
Mm.
falls away and it's gone and that's done.
Mm.
But kind of that there are waves, I feel,
Yeah.
of the proof of your place that you're standing on, or the
Yeah.
ground that you're standing on.
Yeah.
And
And I would even say, like, I sometimes jokingly call that what you just shared because we're watching a lot of people in the course go through their own karmic shedding process, right? And I sometimes call what you just shared the last kiss. Really, because it's like, I think when you're letting anything go, it's like a process, a process, a process. And then there's kind of an intense moment where it's like it's back and it's like
So
up in your
back.
business, you know? It's just, you can't deny it's there. But it's like oftentimes, actually, that's the very last moment.
Mm.
It's like, that's the kind of really like the shaking ground of, are you going to be transmuted or not?
Did you shed this
Is this
skin or
shed and
not?
it's
Yeah.
gone and you're not touching it again and you don't have anything to do with it again? Or is it a little bit unclear? And, many times I feel like when it's clear, even karmically, it just invites new possibilities. I was just kind of telling the story on one of the calls the other day about, like, in my own experience growing up in America, like, that was a culture that was, you could say, predisposed to the use of alcohol to some extent. And I also, was participating in that. Then at some point in my life, it came, no, that's not for me. Uh, I don't really want to involve myself in that. Um, but as the last kiss of that was coming, there was just like crazy, crazy, ridiculous situations. Like, I was in this situation with this. I was it was kind of strangers, actually. This couple that I'd never met before, and we were all kind of sitting together. We just had met, and they were like, we haven't told anybody in our whole life, but we just got married tonight. Tonight's our wedding night, and here we are with you, and it would mean so much to us if you would just have one glass of champagne with us, And it was just kind of like, you're kidding, It was like, situations where it was like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
you felt a bit like I can't say no to that, because, but then when it came really clear in my heart, like, that's just gone. It's no longer there. Like, from that moment, and that was like 25, 30 years ago, from that moment until today, the number of times I've been offered an alcoholic drink by somebody is like 5 or 10. So it went from just like 5 or 10 per day, or just like, seemingly falling from the sky, to almost non-existent, because it just clarified itself in my heart that that wasn't where I was at. And that's sounds similar to your.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I feel that's really important to know, and to be able to be in it without, the sense of, okay, it's a complete moving backwards. But kind of to have the knowing, and therefore also being able to trust into that, to just be in the process of shedding, rather than, giving up in frustration in a way, right?
Yeah, that's, if this transmuting process is real, rebirth is a process, right? It shakes you a little bit before you shake off the last little bit of your, in the kind of ancient native cultures, one of the signs of transmutation was snakes, because they completely shed their skin, right? And that they're reborn. And of course, yogis have this profound love also for snakes, because that's the Kundalini. And I feel like in the scheme of transmutation, Kundalini is your ally. She can really shake the system. But inside of that kind of like metaphor is the snake, who's literally, the whole old skin is gone. It looks like a snake unto itself almost. It's like, and sometimes in that process it has to kind of wiggle a little bit at the end to get that skin to release before it comes into a new birth, a new opportunity.
Love, can you speak a little bit more about Kundalini and transmutation from worldly, energetic form into emptiness? Like
Wow, that's a
from transient into eternity,
yeah.
and Kundalini and the process of that.
I mean, that's what the I know we've talked on the podcast before to some degree about the koshas, the different bodies that we have. And I would say that that question very much in some ways relates to that. And even the notion that we have of karma, I would say oftentimes in the way that it's used in the modern world is very kind of like operating very much on the physical level, actually. Like we have this notion of cause and effect is happening, and even sometimes you'll see people talk about karma like, oh, that person got what they deserved. Like that's their karma. And it's like that is not the divine concept of karma at all. Like nobody's getting what they deserve. What every soul deserves is to recognize the light of their own heart, no matter how far that they've gone from that experience. Like the longing of the spiritual heart of every being is to return back to the recognition of the oneness of their own existence. And yet, many times when you see people talking about karma in the world, they're talking about a very mechanistic kind of scientific worldview of karma, like cause and effect on the most material aspect of who we are. And yet, that's not at all the most powerful way to work with karma. The most powerful way to work with karma is what we were talking about earlier, right? It's like there begins to be a kind of a separation that you experience between yourself and your thoughts and your karmic memory and you. And then, wow, there's so much more space. And I loved earlier, you're sharing so much. I have space from my kind of national karma that I shook off more recently. And that wasn't like an exploding sense of freedom. It was rather a profoundly grounding sense of freedom. And that explanation, I feel like, resonates so much with me because many times we also have a slightly mechanistic view of freedom, actually, right? It's like my freedom is to do anything that I want. I have the freedom to do anything that I want. In yoga, many times we would just turn that around and say, if you really want freedom, the freedom would be to not do what you want.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yeah.
completely different grounding in the conceptual framework of freedom, right? Like, and I feel like in the process of overcoming karma, that second notion of freedom is much more important than the first, because maybe you can have a strong impulse, like, I'm drawn to do this thing in the habit that I've always been drawn to do it. I'm you spoke beautifully about it with this return of the and it's like, wow, it's drawing me back in to do the same thing again. Okay, but at any moment inside that karmic process, there is space. And that space, even just a small amount of the space, even if I just step back for a second, okay, I'm still going to do that activity, but I'm going to give myself some sense of space between me and my action. So that right there is overcoming karma. Like, even if it's just a split second, it's like, okay, I'm pulled back. I'm not going to immediately jump into the way that I would have reacted in the past. I'm just going to give myself that little bit of space. And that little bit of space is like cutting the energetic tie to that pull of memory.
Isn't that karma also?
The stepping back?
Yeah. to be in that space,
I don't
to
think
step back. Who steps back? What steps back?
but I don't think that is karma, because I feel like, I mean, what I've kind of been pondering lately and feel like I've understood is that, um, like in terms of the koshas, the karma relates more to Annamaya kosha, the physical body, Manomaya kosha, the mental body, and Pranamaya kosha, the energy body. Our karma is primarily stored in those bodies. And when we're free from that karma, Anandamaya kosha is still in existence, right? It's like there are, and that's how you can say, from the perspective of Advaita, like the bliss of your being, the profound presence of who you are, it cannot go anywhere. It's more like the basis upon which all these experiences are beginning to unfold. And in that way, when there is a strong magnetic pull, just the ability to like step back and remember, it's a real experience, because that is who you are on a much more lasting level than your memory. Like your memory, even in one lifetime, we talked about earlier, it can change completely. You can start out as, okay, I'm a politician, and by the end of your life, you get fed up with that system. You say, oh, if there's anything I'm not a politician. So it's like the kind of memory of the dynamic expression of your life is, not the end say in who you are. The end say in who you are is deeper than that and more profound than that. And that process of creating space, it's not necessarily created by the personal identity. It can be created by something deeper than the personal identity. And I feel like in that, we get maybe a little bit back into what we were talking about earlier. There's yogis that say that in every breath is a death. Now that's much too extreme for I think most human beings. But we could at least say every day is a brand new opportunity. Like at night we go into deep sleep, we shed everything of who we are. We wake up completely refreshed because we've touched into the state of who we are. And then during the day, all of our troubles and all of these memories and all of the things that we've had as association with what I am begin to reassert themselves. And at the end of the day, we're tired.
Of all of it.
because we've been too much in association.
I want to ask you another question about rebirth and what comes back.
Very interesting.
Annamaya kosha not. Pranamaya kosha not. Or
Pranamaya
yes?
kosha, yes, I would like, is what I feel like I've understood, like something of our, like there's different kind of ways of looking at this in the yogic world, but what seems to me true and is that on some level some of our memory is stored rather in our energetic body. And that would make absolute sense from the perspective of yoga, right? It's like, what are you aiming to cleanse in your yogic practice? The chakra system and the energy that's held in that system. And sometimes we feel on a very visceral, very actual level, like that we did clear something or that something's more free. Sometimes we even know what chakra that freedom is associated with. It's like, wow, I used to be kind of like stuck energetically in my throat and I didn't feel like I could speak, and now something has more space and something's more present and I can speak with more clarity and more heart because something is unblocked. And so there must be something in the energetic system that and like what the yogis would say about that, actually, and I think that that's what's kind of relevant and interesting to the conversation, is that is only memory. And I think that's very useful it's a very useful way of thinking about karma rather than being I'm being pushed around by life and the planets and this, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
forced to do this, and I have to do this behavior because this planet is in this position. It's like all of it from every single level is only memory. It's like, so is there any requirement from the universe that at any moment you're forced to interact with that memory? It cannot be true. It's only memory. So at any moment in
Mm-hmm.
time, anywhere on the pathway, you can be free from that, right? It's just a memory of the way that I've been called to behave in the past. And, you know, I find it kind of, you could say that introduces this very delightful sense of the impersonalness of life also. Because what are we like as human beings? I mean, as on the top level, we are all spirit, we are all one. There's no such thing as even another person. That idea is completely false. But if we want to interact on the level of you and me, and we're seeing other people, they are also just a conglomeration of memory. And that way of seeing is true, and it leads to a profound sense of the impersonalness
Mm. Yeah.
of life, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
an accumulation of memory, I'm an accumulation of memory. At any point in the unfolding of life, there's nothing compelling me in any real way to make that association. It's like, and that is freedom. Like,
And that is death, and that is transmutation.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I can so much relate to that. Like once I went to the jungle for this 49 days self retreat, and I was basically out of
Mm.
society completely for a while, and only in nature. And coming back, this was so clear how every individual, including myself, is kind of spinning in their own little bubble, um, in their memory, in
Yeah.
their karmic bubble. And with that came so much compassion and so much connection somehow
Wow.
to see
Beautiful.
that this is not,
Beautiful.
we are all the same. Like
Yeah.
it's all the same
Yeah.
expression
Yeah.
of
I
love.
love that sharing so much, because I feel like there's kind of an idea, a popular idea in the mind. It's like, okay, if I extricate myself from my karma, then I won't have any feeling toward life anymore. Like I won't know how to connect to other people. I won't like have meaningful relationships. And I feel like that sharing is exactly proof that that's completely untrue.
Mm.
It's like you see yourself as a bundle of self definitions. Everybody else is a bundle of self definitions or a bundle of memory. But rather than that taking away the experience of compassion, it enhances the experience
So
of
much.
compassion.
And like not with friends or known people. Like I
Yeah.
remember walking down the street and having that with, the people who clean the street, and like
Yeah.
just complete strangers.
Yeah.
Like there was such a compassion and
Mm.
a knowingness and intimacy in a way,
Yeah.
with all of that.
That's what, somebody asked the Buddha, why should we love everybody? And the Buddha said, because at one point in some lifetime, they've all been your dear, like they've all been dear to you. They've been your family, they've been your friend, they've been your lover, they've been something to you. And I remember also once coming out of a very strong spiritual experience, walking down the street and having the feeling that you were talking about compassion, but even one step more, like I felt like certain people, I could feel the relation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, like you used to be someone so close to me, and now I see you, and it's like we maybe don't even look at each other. But that deep, profound sense of kind of real intimacy, shared intimacy, is so alive when we kind of come into the space of what's not personal, right? What's not my memory and my people and my identity, but rather just life as it's unfolding. And then it's like, oh wow, there's this tremendous sense of connectedness, there's this tremendous sense of love, there's this tremendous sense of compassion for life, because life itself is miraculous, you could say. Beautiful.
Transmutation, the power of transmutation and the yogic process, transmutation, karma being part of it, death being part of it. I loved our conversation, Devdas.
Me too.
So this was Wisdom in Motion with the Akasha family. Keep shining in the spirit of yoga.